clients, facilities management, maintenance, all kinds of things. You know, I have other experience running a business. I started a business with 0 people. I certainly didn't grow it to 1,300 like Todd did, but I'm sure proud of my little business. My clients have entrusted their entire life savings to our firm. I've acted as a fiduciary in that role for 20 years. I'm not a stockbroker that sells things on commissions. I get paid a fee by my clients, and they've trusted literally their life savings to me. I've served in extremely sensitive positions within my church, as we have a lay ministry. I've been responsible for multiple congregations and worked in very delicate family challenges for years and years. My service on the Salvation Army speaks for itself. So, you know, I think there's capable people on this stage that could all do a good job. I'm certainly as qualified as any of the rest of them to do the work.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the last question. Mr. Davis reminded me that, or actually corrected me and says we do have to disclose the bond on our sale of homes now. Thank you very much. So what are my applicable skills? I've been an auditor, I do analysis, I do forecasting, I do planning, and I've done bond issuances. I'm also a homeowner, mother of graduated students, so I have a big stake in this, and I would say that we all do, even if we don't have students in the school district or going through school right now, we all have a stake, and everybody should be represented, not just the students. And I don't say just the students because we want our students to have everything we can possibly give them, but I think that homeowners also have a huge stake. And I've also served on the RD Planning Board, as Robin knows, and that's a good experience to have as well. So I have a lot of financial background, and I have a lot of community service background. Thank you.
Fingers are cold. Well, I would say the background that makes me most suited for this position is my education background. I have a master's degree in education. I have a teaching credential. I taught for more than 10 years at the middle school and high school level, and then stopped when I had my children, so now I substitute at the K through 12 level, and I also teach courses at the university level. So I have a wide degree of experience working in the schools and in education. My children also attend the schools, so as you mentioned, that gives me a greater stake in what happens at the schools and follow through there. And I've mentioned previously that I serve on the Rancho Bernardo Community Council. I also serve on the Westwood Elementary Foundation and the Bernardo Heights Middle School PTA. So I do have an experience working in the community and as a volunteer. And budget-wise, my husband and I do have a small business, and our books are always balanced, so there's that as well.
I could have grabbed those extra seconds. This is a great question. I was just talking with Melinda about this earlier, and the fact of the matter is I'm not a bond analyst, I'm not a curriculum expert, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I believe that I can bring my skill set to help where I can at the board. I'm a parent of students in the district, I'm a volunteer in the school, I've chaired the Los Penn Academy Foundation, I'm part of the Noah Cecil University Foundation, I'm a volunteer in the community, the chair of the Black Mountain District in the Boy Scouts of America. I've been on the Rancho Y board, the town council board, 4 terms as president, Rancho Penasquitos. Experience with big, tough issues. I mentioned the pension reform, defeating a sales tax increase in the city of San Diego. I'm a small business owner. I have board experience. I've served on the San Diego County Taxpayers Association, the Lincoln Club of San Diego County, and I now chair or run 2 nonprofits, a 501c3 and a 501c4, the San Diego County Prosperity Institute and the San Diego County Prosperity Foundation. And I have the support and the endorsement of the teachers, taxpayers, and realtors.
I grew up here. My my parents are both lifelong or career-long teachers in the district. I went to school here, kindergarten through high school graduation. And now I've got two little ones here, kindergarten and second grade. And I'm on their campus 2-3 times a day, depending on how many hours I'm putting in volunteering and what I've got to be there. I'm on the PTA board. I volunteer with the foundation. I have a special needs child, so I get to be part of the special education curriculum at our school, which is amazing. Our ability awareness program. I know it's going to go district-wide any day now. It's fabulous, fantastic stuff, and I am so pleased to be a part of it and to share those leadership roles at my kids' schools. It's so important. I've also been a member of the Rancho Penasquitos Town Council for the past 4 years, and in that capacity, I've taken on numerous leadership roles. I've been chair of just about every committee there is and established many because I saw a need and I thought, whoa, we don't have a good outreach to our community. Our community doesn't know we're here. I'm going to do something about that. I took over our website, started putting a lot more community activities there. I reached out to our local zip code magazine, 92129, and established a relationship with them. I write a column for the town council in that every month, or every other month. I was treasurer. I righted a sinking ship. We had not filed taxes in years. I fixed things there. I'm a law professor. That's going to help. That can't help but help.
As I mentioned previously, by trade, I'm an accountant. I've been practicing CPA for over 30 years. I advise clients and businesses on how to structure and operate their businesses so that they don't go bankrupt. Essentially what we do as accountants is we render order out of chaos. We go in and we fix things. So numbers don't scare me. The bigger they are, that doesn't worry me. I also have experience in dealing with large dysfunctional governmental organizations. I served 4 years on the City of San Diego's Audit Committee. I was one of the first citizen members of that group. And we took an organization that was very poorly run and made it much better run from a fiscal perspective. And part of that involved reviewing financial statements and budgets and everything else that goes along with this. So again, I have experience in bringing transparency, accountability, and fiscal discipline to an organization that sadly lacks it. And sadly, I think the school board is in that category. It's on a much smaller scale. It's about 1/10 the size of the city, but I do believe it needs that kind of hand. I think the board needs to be more involved in the operations and in setting policy and in making sure that the superintendent implements that policy as prescribed. And I think that you could use somebody on this board who doesn't just show up to cut ribbons and get photographs, but actually gets in there and does the work.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Are you waiting? No, I'm waiting. I thought the dog was asleep. Okay. All right. We're moving on to the next question, and Todd, you get to answer it. Why should any incumbent be reelected when their board allowed the cab to be set the way that it did?
Seems like cabs is the subject of the night. I've made hundreds of decisions that supported this district and allowed it to move forward. The cab was one of those decisions. Some of you may choose to believe that that decision is the only one that should matter, that it was such a grievous, huge, unfortunate decision that I'm not worthy to continue in my role. I honestly don't agree with that. I think our district is moving forward in a very positive way and will continue to move forward in a very positive way, whether we restructure the cab debt or not. I mean, the thing that folks need to understand is that this outrageous tax burden everyone is talking about, even in its very worst case, 20 years from now, is less money than most homeowners in our Melrose districts pay today. We're not talking about people's total property tax increasing by factors of 4 and 5. We're talking about increments of a few $100s a year over the next 20 years. So I think people need to put this in perspective. It's easy to make a soundbite out of $1 billion bond. But the reality, when you dig into the numbers, and I do dig into the numbers, I don't just go to ribbon cuttings. In fact, I rarely go to ribbon cuttings. I dig into the facts and I understand the work that I need to do in order to move the district forward, and that's why I think I should be reelected.
Just one observation. We're an hour into our debate tonight, and we've not had one question about what are we doing for kids in the classroom. And this isn't a criticism, this is saying, do we want to spend our time? I'm happy to answer questions about cabs. In fact, I eat, drink, and breathe cabs, and I can talk about them in my sleep, I probably have. But this should be about what are we doing about kids. Schools are about educating our kids. And as trustees, we have lots of hats that we wear, and one of the hats is to act as a capital financing agent with the cabs. But cabs, just to answer that question again, cabs are simple. It's simply a bond that you don't make a payment on until a period of time in the future, and they grow at interest. They are not esoteric. Any person here that owns a U.S. savings bond owns a cab. The fact that our district chose to follow that strategy rather than increasing taxes in 2008, or in 2008 they were issued, or they were approved and then issued in 09 and 11. The fact that the district chose to take that approach, you can kick us in the teeth and throw us out of office if you want to. But we have fabulous schools. We were hired to educate our kids. We have the highest graduation rate out of all 42 school districts in our county. We have, even with rising class sizes because of budget problems, we have continuously rising test scores, AP test scores, more kids taking the SAT and the ACT, more kids qualifying for college. Our product is phenomenal, and I put that record up against anybody.
Disregard the last 4 words.
Up against anybody.
So, if this is just like a savings bond, how come saving bonds aren't considered illegal now? These cabs are now considered illegal. In fact, our own treasurer, Dan McAllister, was part of the legislation that said these should be made illegal. And what did they do at the state legislative level? They went ahead and made it illegal for any sort of cab to be used by school districts in the future. So there are issues with the cab. I do think that maybe there's a place for them, but maybe more in the private sector, not necessarily in the public sector, but there isn't a place here in the Poway Unified School District for them. As I said, I hate the burden on future generations.
The pressure.
Once again, we've been over this and over this and over this, that obviously the cabs are a mistake, that they're illegal, they're not for the best. My one thought on it would be to add that a board that's going to rush through the first suggestion they get to improve things, when it has, if you look at it, it's not necessarily going to be an improvement. It might be, we might be in just the exact same spot we're in now. I think that, that it ought to be something that is more considered, that we look into other alternatives to this to find a solution.
Thank you. I think it was a fellow candidate who stated earlier in a very ingratiating way that any one of us could serve well as a member of the board, and I would also go so far as to say that I don't think that there's any one of us up here that doesn't deserve to serve on the board moving forward. And listen, I'm a realist. There's the other practical side of this. 3 of us up here are going to win. 3 of us need to work with each other. I mentioned in my opening remarks that I was upset at the cab issue, but this is more than just the cab issue. There's more at stake in Poway Unified than just this cab issue. The cab issue will resolve itself, whether it's by a vote of the board or whether it's something that's put to the voters. It was unfortunate that it took a Voice of San Diego expose to uncover what happened, that Poway Unified was spotlighted in the Wall Street Journal. We learned that over 180 other districts were issuing similar bonds as a result. Even worse, we all learned a lot more about cabs than we ever cared or wanted to in our lives. And so now we have to move forward. We have to address the cab issue, but pay attention to all the other aspects of how unified that make it such a great school district. And I look forward to working with any other two candidates up here on the board.
A lot of this has been said up here that I think is a little disingenuous. And schools are about more than the buildings. Yes, those buildings are nice. They've been fixed up. Great. But the capital appreciation bond improvements aren't what made our district great. We have great parents. We have fantastic teachers who helped. We've got smart kids. That's not by accident, and the buildings didn't make that happen. Let's put these beautiful buildings we have in any other district. You're not going to have, it's not going to magically improve the kids' scores. This is about our parents. This is about our community here. And yeah, the cab was a huge mistake. But what do we do to fix it? We've got to bring those community members in. We've got to get those parents involved. Maybe this wouldn't have happened in the first place if we had been more concerned about bringing in the true reason for the success of our district, making sure that we continue to care what these people, the primary reason for the success of our district, what they wanted, what was important to them. Let's give everybody all the details. Make sure everybody understood what the board was considering. Make sure everybody knows that, you know, when these schools need to be fixed up again in 20 years, we'll just have paid off maybe our first year on these bonds. Our kids and grandkids, they won't be able to fix up their schools. Bond capacity is taken up. Let's keep that in mind.
I can assure you, Michelle, I won't be disingenuous. The cab was catastrophic. It was, as I said, a colossal blunder. We are completely bonded out for the next 40 years. Clearly, we're going to have to replace and remodel existing schools, even the brand new ones, before that. And so I think that has to be said. I'm sure the captain of the Titanic had a great record before he piloted that ship. But even if he had survived, I don't think anyone would have hired him to do it again. There are some mistakes that are made that are fatal. As I tell my son, there are some mistakes you don't get to make twice. This is and should be one of them. And I think you need to pay very careful attention to what's being said up here. Because Mr. Zane is clearly not saying that they don't deserve to be reelected. He's okay with that. He's seeking to join them. And I think the other 5 of us are seeking to replace them. And I think that's a critical distinction. And I think that they deserve to be replaced because of the cap.
Before I answer my question, I'd like to apologize to Ms. Eubanks. You're also a teacher, a K through 12 teacher. I apologize. I'm one of 2 K through 12 teachers. The question is whether the incumbents deserve to move forward because of the decisions made on the cap. Well, you're hearing incumbents, wrap themselves around the great record, our outstanding college acceptance rates and test scores and graduation rates, and that's all terrific. But that's not the result of the board. That's the result of the hard work of students, teachers, and parents. They're the ones that deserve credit for the high test scores. The incumbents should be held accountable for the decisions they make. And it's not just the capital appreciation bonds, it's also the Melrose taxes. There are people in the Melrose taxes today that are having their Melrose money siphoned off and removed from their Melrose district to fund Melrose projects in non-Melrose areas. This violates the fundamental promise of what Melrose taxes are about. It's about funding the infrastructure and schools of that community. But instead, their taxes are being hijacked. Our incumbents should be judged on their record and the decisions they make, not taking credit for the hard work of students, teachers, and parents.
Okay, Mark, it's your turn to lead off. I like this question better. Since you complained about the rest, what is the most important issue for students getting into college? How does PUSD support this?
Most important. Well, kids have to have fundamental literacy, and literacy isn't simply just reading. But literacy is across all subjects. It's across history, it's across math. It's across having a breadth of knowledge, almost what you would call a liberal arts education in the old days with colleges, right? Kids have to be able to think critically. And the new Common Core standards, which are all in the heat these days, pro and con, the fundamentals behind that concept is that kids have to be able to do more than just get the right answer on a problem. They have to be able to think through why that's the right answer, how is it the right answer, and what does it apply. So I think the critical issues facing our kids are making sure that our kids have the resources and the tools necessary to have that breadth of knowledge to leave high school and be successful. I think that we need to be personalizing the education to our kids more than we ever have before. Along with Mr. Gutschall, I'm a very strong proponent in, and talked with our superintendent and leaders a lot about how are we going to provide greater pathway for our kids to learn. Online classes, different types of coursework, things where they can really excel and try their passions in various ways. So for me, fundamentally, we have to have just a robust, rigorous, personalized education for every kid so that they're literate, and when they leave school, they have options in front of them, not just one path to go down.
I think the idea behind Common Core is a good one, standardized across the United States, some sort of test. But I think the way it's been implemented, how much it costs, and we don't even know if this works yet. In states where they fully implemented it, like New York, the teachers are screaming to try and get out of this curriculum. Kids are not learning. Children are going home crying because they can't do math problems. And I really think that that has to be looked at and examined before any district just wholeheartedly grabs on to a curriculum that hasn't truly been tested. What do you have to do to get into college? Yes, you have to work hard. You have to have parents who care. I think QSD does a great job in inviting parents into the classroom to help and get it involved as much as, or not involved as much as they want to be. So I think that support system has to exist. Then they can go on to learn and be critical thinkers and have the support from the community to go on and do well on test scores to get into those colleges. All of those things are important. It is a step-by-step thing. Each child is different too, so their learning style is different. And now we have all of these great technologies that children can go out and learn different ways that works for them. Thank you.
We need to make sure that our students are well-rounded, that they are not just learning one certain way, that we are working with different modalities, that the students are not just getting good grades, but that they're also learning to be critical thinkers, that they're learning how they're scoring well on their tests, and then including in the other aspects of community service, making sure that they are involved in some sort in extracurricular activities, clubs. We need that whole package needs to be put together so that the students can do well and so that they can thrive once they've left high school.
Simply stated, yes, literacy. I think more of an emphasis on civics and the importance of engagement in the community. Preparing the students for not just for college or career readiness, so that they choose not to go to a college. They have the ability, even though they'll have them prepared to go to a college, making sure that the district prepares them for the A through G requirements to enter into UC schools or Cal State universities. But beyond that, it's just preparing them to be productive members of society should they choose not to go into college.
Yeah, I'm going to echo some of that, but I think it's about making sure we're offering all of our students a really broad range of opportunities. If we have one narrow A through G pathway, so many kids are going to fall off the edges there. We're doing a pretty good job bringing them in. And let's not kid ourselves, the grades and the test scores are important. You're not going to a great college if you don't have those. But at the same time, not every kid is going. And the career and technical education opportunities are important for a lot of kids, and it gives them some base knowledge so they can go into a full-time job or maybe some kind of a trade apprenticeship when they graduate from high school, but at the same time preserve that option that they will later want to go back to college at some point. It's, again, the broad range of opportunities, I think, is the only way to reach all of these kids and make sure every kid who's interested gets what they need. And extracurriculars are very important here to a well-rounded kid, but so that they are, the AP kids, the really driven kids who are going to go to one of those top universities, get what they need, the best education, the most opportunities. And the kids who aren't going that path still have an opportunity to be successful in a career possibly where they will want to go back at some later point, and we've prepared them in high school to be able to get there.
Again, not being a career educator, I can only speak from my own experiences. And I still believe in the 3 R's. And we teach STEM very well in this district: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, to the point of overemphasis, perhaps. And I think that studies have shown over and over and over again that the 2 most critical skills to succeeding at the collegiate level are being able to master complex reading and writing. And I think there's less focus on that than there should be. I agree that critical thinking is a very important element. It doesn't take a computer to teach critical thinking. I taught accounting ethics at San Diego State. I worked with people who had phenomenal quantitative skills, but their critical thinking was not great. Their complex reading and writing skills were not great. And so they were highly prepared at the high school level for STEM, but they weren't prepared for what you have to do after you leave college. And so I think that's very important. And so I think doing things like defunding our libraries and cutting back support staff for people who don't excel in technical subjects is short-sighted. And I think that we need to put some resources back into those areas rather than focusing everything on having a new lab, having a new computer, having a new Bunsen burner.
I have a daughter. She's a senior at Poway High School. She is going through this process right now, trying to apply to college. She's taken all of her tests. She's prepared her essays. She's applied at a number of schools already. So the one thing that we're consistently hearing from all the different schools, it's not just about your grades. It's not just about your test scores. They are looking for well-rounded students, students that have participated in athletics and extracurricular activities in clubs like debate or robotics. So it's also about students that are active in their community. Now, one of the things that's interesting is, in our particular community, this is a very competitive environment, not just amongst our children, but amongst a lot of the families. It's a competitive place, and our children are being pushed. In a lot of ways, that's really good. But some kids have distinct advantages because of the wealth that they happen to have, that they're actually able to get special guidance on how to appropriately take SATs and ACT tests. They're even getting guidance on the strategy of applying for college. And let me tell you, there is a strategy. It's a game. It's about checking off boxes and accomplishing certain things in a certain order, in a certain sequence. So could we help students, especially lower income students, learn the strategy? Absolutely. And I think that's something that we can bring to the table.
This is another wonderful question that we could spend a whole evening on. Just talking about strategies that support kids getting into college. I sit on the National AVID board, and AVID was created to do exactly that. Poway Unified is a model AVID district. We actually have 2 national demonstration schools, Westview High School and Black Mountain Middle, 2 of only about 120 in the country. So we do a lot of work with our kids that come from backgrounds that don't understand that process of getting into college. But I'm going to interpret the question as to what does it take to succeed after you leave us, whether you go to college, whether you get into college or not. And I think there's one really incredibly important thing, and that is love of learning. I don't know what the world's going to be like in 20 years when, or 18 years when a kindergartner that's starting with us today is applying to college. But I do know that if they love learning and they have some basic skills like problem solving and critical thinking and collaboration and they can apply the knowledge they learn to real-world problems and see a connection between learning and things they enjoy in the real world, then I know they're going to do well. Whether they go to a four-year college, a two-year college, a trade school, the military, or straight into the world of work. And that's what we want to prepare our kids for, and I think we can do that in Poway Unified.
Oh, got a new question. Okay. Jeannie, in what ways can the district improve special education?
Maybe a lot more parental involvement. The parents know what the needs are of their children, and many of them, especially with the internet, they can do a lot of research in what helps their children and what takes away from their learning. I think it's really important to employ the parents of these special needs children. It would to help other kids that possibly have the same special need, but maybe their parents can't spend the time to go and do all the research, but that child could benefit from the research that the parent has done. And that wouldn't cost anything. In fact, that would be something that all the children could benefit from. Say with dyslexia, that apparently is, or it is a problem. Some people have very small amount of it, and some people they can't hardly read because of it. There are lots of children who have that issue in QSD, and their parents have done tons of research, including what kind of tests they should take, what kind of issues should teachers look for, what kind of processes can they do to make the reading easier for the children. So I think that's a good economical and safe way to help the children.
I would agree that utilizing parents is an excellent way to work with the special ed students. I think that the parents do have possibly a better grasp of what their child's needs are. I do not profess to be a special ed expert, but I did work in a special ed class over the summer, and one thing that I noticed was there were quite a few students that had varying issues in the classroom, and I think that it wasn't always conducive to learning because the teacher couldn't individualize the instruction. And I would like to see if there's some way that we could work to work on the special ed classroom so that different students that had different abilities were working in groups together so that the teacher could differentiate her instruction to reach those students that maybe she wasn't able to in the grade group.
Thank you. Well, I think Kimberly just touched upon it a little bit. There's so many different types of special needs students out there. I'm sure that the special needs of Michelle's child, for instance, are different than someone else's. And I just had a great conversation with someone today, a constituent who emailed on the topic of dyslexia. I think that individual probably emailed every candidate up here. But we spent some time on the phone today, and it was quite educational. And I have no reason otherwise to know how pervasive or extensive the dyslexia is within the student body population. And I think that there may be ways to, whether it's bringing in other parents to assist the teachers with special needs children, to better equipping teachers and administrators in terms of how to identify students who have special needs challenges, and that starts at possibly the credentialing level. So that an example that was used is, a school can do hearing testing, and it's back on the parents and the family to get the student a hearing aid. A school can assist with providing vision testing, then it's back on the parents to get the students glasses. Similarly, for dyslexia training or testing, then let the parents make them aware of that and enable them to get their child the help that they need. But even that much doesn't appear to be happening now, unless somebody could correct me on that.
90 seconds,
This is the special education kids. These kiddos are snowflakes. Every single one of them is just different. I have a kindergartner who is in an autism class, and every kid in there has an autism diagnosis, and every kiddo in there has completely different needs. Well, I think it's important for our district to be more open to giving these kids what they ask for and what their parents are asking for and what they need, rather than fighting it all the time. We're going to fight them to the hill. We're going to take them to court. We're going to take them to the Ninth Circuit. I mean, the Delaney Harrington, I believe was her name. She was a fantastic student at Poway High School. I think she's about to graduate, or maybe she graduated last year. The district was fighting her. She has hearing issues. The district fought her since 8th grade on getting some closed captioning so that she could do the best she could do in school. Granted, she succeeded in spite of all that. But the deal here is that one special needs dad recently, a parent of a special needs student, was describing it to me as being legally required to provide a hamburger. The district has to do that. But what we really want and what our kids deserve is filet mignon. We're not shooting for that minimum for our general ed kids. That would never be okay. Why is it okay for the special education kids? We should do the best we can for them as well. Let's stop fighting them and give them what they need to succeed.
Well, I have a great deal of respect for Michelle on this topic because A, she has a special needs child, and she didn't mention that she's certified both academically and legally to represent special needs people. And so I plan on relying heavily on her advice when we serve together on the board. I think she also... Thanks to us, I think she... You haven't heard my I also agree with Jeannie. I think the parents know what their kids need. I think they don't know how to provide it. They're looking for the school to do that. I have talked to numerous special ed parents who say that they have to go in to the district office every year and beg to keep their kids in special ed programs because the PUSD is always trying to mainstream them, get them out of special ed, cut their costs. And I think that's ridiculous. I don't understand why they would think that from one year to the next, magically, their special need would disappear. And so I think that's the first thing we have to do is we have, as she says, we have to listen to the parents, we have to support them, and we have to allow resources to do that. I think sometimes you have to take resources away from other places. I find it interesting that Michelle mentions a hearing impaired person. We've gone to great lengths to provide for the hearing impairment of our superintendent, but apparently we can't do that for one of our students.
Our school district is about public schools, and public schools need to represent all, need to educate all. And we can't have a two-tiered system where we're teaching special ed or special needs children in a different, with different sets of expectations than we do with other students. So we have to commit to teaching all. It can start with providing more teacher training, and that's the first point of my 4-point plan, is to prioritize the classroom and provide teachers with necessary training and expertise. And yeah, there has been a particular parent that reached out to all of us who has a dyslexic child. But we can certainly provide more training to teachers to be able to identify cases of dyslexia. So they can identify it early on and make sure that this child gets the necessary resources. But to something that Jeannie brought up, you know, our school board spent $147,000 to put state-of-the-art video cameras in the boardroom. We need to invest in the classroom, not the boardroom, and make sure that we're putting our money towards children. The other thing that I want to bring up is in the 4th point of my 4-point plan is about parent choice and empowering parents. A friend of mine has an autistic child that was being mainstreamed, that was going to Chaparral Elementary. This child was not getting serviced properly by teachers, was getting bullied by students. They tried to transfer to Painted Rock, and their transfer was denied. I think we need to treat parents as customers and work to satisfy their needs for their special needs child.
Well, first off, I think it's inappropriate to disparage our superintendent because he has a hearing loss. I think that's absolutely an irresponsible statement to make. All of these special ed students, as Michelle mentioned, are snowflakes, including my nephew Jimmy, who's autistic and attends Sundance Elementary. They're nuanced. there is no simple one-size-fits-all kind of answer. The issues that surrounded the Delaney Harrington case are far more nuanced than one would want to believe, and far more nuanced than we can talk about in 90 seconds, even though it's not appropriate to do so. I do agree that better strategies for preparing our general ed teachers so that they can be more efficient when students are mainstreamed. It's often the choice of parents to mainstream students. They want to have their student participate as broadly as possible in the educational opportunities of their school. I think that's an area that we can do. Improving communication, I think, is an important piece between parents and teachers and the entire IEP team. We're doing some work there to improve our IEP process with some new technology. I know Charles doesn't like technology, but it does make a difference. And lastly, we need to advocate for the federal government to actually fund what they said they would do when they passed IDEA, which is fund 40% of the cost. They've never, in the history of the program since the early 70s, they've never paid more than about 15%.
I think this is one of those subjects that a little humility goes a long way. We have really talented and committed special ed professionals in our district. They love our kids. They bust their tails every day, heartbreaking, difficult situations, and they do a fabulous job. They are not perfect. These kids and situations are extremely unique. But I've spent enough time with these people and seen tears running down their faces as they work with these kids and families. By and large, they are trying to do a really great job for our kids. Nobody's out there holding the purse strings trying to let a kid suffer. That's not what happens. Now, Todd talked about this issue of not being funded by the federal government. This last year, approximately $30 million came out of our general fund to help pay for special education for kids, above and beyond what we were reimbursed by the federal government. That term is known as what we call encroachment. What that means is all kids get an equal amount of funding from the state, but because we have our special ed kids, we're taking $30 million away from the regular kid education to help supplement the special ed because the federal government doesn't pay what they've said that they would pay. That's a huge, huge problem. Last thing, let me just comment on John's comment about the video in the boardroom. You can't call for greater transparency, and then when we do something to increase transparency by putting in video cameras so that we can stream board members to community members sitting at home, you can't say we want more transparency, but then gripe if we do something to provide more transparency. I think you have
I do this every time. Oh, this is your last question. Oh, I hope I can read it. Who wrote this?
No, it was an audience member.
PUSD has been promoting a paperless initiative. However, paperless initiative, I can't.
I was able to decide.
But not
We tried to fix all the words.
However,
Human eyes are not fully developed until 8 years old. It's a technology one, yeah. Ages 5 to 8, still critical for healthy vision development. If elected, how will you ensure that our schools remain a safe learning environment to many children suffering computer vision syndrome?
you're good. PUSD has been promoting a paperless initiative. However, human eyes are not fully developed till 18 years old. You read the whole thing?
Okay. Wow.
iPad initiative? Is that what I heard? Is this question about the iPads and the one-to-one
Basically,
computing?
I think-
It's not about paperless forms?
No. I think
Okay.
it's about paperless in the classroom.
Okay.
Using
Technology.
iPads.
Using iPads.
Technology.
But the kids have computer
Right.
issues with their.
Wow.
They're worrying that computers
Are gonna hurt their eyes.
Yeah, that's
the
second half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is an excellent question. I don't have an answer to that. I would, but I've never actually thought of that before, and that's a really great, valid point. I'm sorry. I would like to do, I'd really like to research and find out what we can do, because I think it's great that we're getting the iPads in the class and that our kids are getting that technology, but once again, we don't want to be causing harm to our children either. So I think that's certainly a topic that needs some more research for sure.
Now, had the question been submitted paperlessly, clearly, I think if there's studies out there that show that it may be physically harmful to the students, to their vision, etc., that it's developmentally inappropriate, then I think that we ought to discontinue that for that age range and look at implementing it at a later age.
This promises to be a quicker answer than my 1:30, so I want to go back quickly and just take issue with a comment that Mr. Davis made about special education being expensive and taking away from the education of regular kids. That's not what special education is. We have a responsibility to educate all of our children and do it the best that we can do it in this district. It's not about regular kids and those special ed kids. It's all the kids. We're in it for all of them, no matter what their needs, no matter how expensive. We've got to do the best we can. Back to the technology question. I think this comes down to communicating better with parents. This one-to-one iPad program that has been picked up at a lot of schools over the past year, maybe 2 years, this is brand new stuff. We do not have any kind of measurable data that says this is helping our kids, this is really good for the kids. We don't have data that says 3 hours is great for them, but 4 hours is too much. We need some of that. Why are we rushing into this? Technology is not just great just for technology's sake. We need to know that what we're implementing, especially in our younger kids where these vision, these eye issues come up, we need to know that it's good for them. We need to know that we're not asking too much of them physically, and we're not injuring their eyes and their posture and all of these things that come with iPads. We don't have any measurable results here, and we need some before we move forward with this.
You did take that. Point of clarification, I did not disparage the superintendent's hearing loss. I disparaged the board and the district he runs for caring more about his hearing loss than that of a common student. He did not have to sue to get his special needs met. The student in Poway did. Secondly, I'm not against technology. I simply believe we're overinvested in it. This question is a perfect example. You don't need a computer to teach someone to read and write. You need a book. You don't need a computer to teach someone critical thinking. You need a library. And so what are we doing? We're cutting the things that actually teach children to read, to use their eyes, and to become good learners, trackers of words, then investing in something like an iPad, which we've gotten along with for centuries without using. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying I don't know that it's the greatest place to put our resources. And again, I just fundamentally disagree with cutting things like libraries that create, as Mr. Davis said, fundamental literacy for something that is very expensive and that, as studies have shown, the jury is still out.
First, a comment on a previous issue. I agree with Mr. Davis. We need to have transparency in our boardroom. I presented to the board 10 different video cameras for under $4,000, half of which were less than $1,000, but the board pressed forward, spending $147,000. I think we can